going on, Bucs fans? Welcome to Raymond James Stadium. If you are here at the draft celebration, if you are watching us at home, this is the Miller Lite Kickoff Draft Party. We are so excited to be here with you. However you are watching, it is finally draft day. We have been talking about this for so long. So, all right, we want to get you guys ready to know everything that's going to apply to you tonight. All right, Bucs app. This is so important. You can stay up to date and follow along with all the Buccaneers 2021 NFL Draft coverage using the official Buccaneers app. It is available for free on iOS and Android devices. And we also want to remind you to play Bucs Bingo, presented by Coca-Cola, for a chance to win some amazing prizes. Use the Bucs app, tap more, then select fans to get started. And then finally, we want to hear what you think is going to happen in the draft. We have predictive gaming. You can scan the QR code now to predict what position you think the Bucs will select first. And we got our results up there and how it's going so far. We know there's going to be a lot more people, but yeah, looking like defensive line and running back are our top choices. Okay, so now again, Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And I don't know if you remember this, the last time we were here, something kind of important happened. I don't know if you remember this, but we won the Super Bowl. That happened.
I do remember that.
You remember
yes,
that?
Yes.
You were here for that too? Yeah, so that was the last time we were in this stadium, and so we figured we got to take a look back at that incredible season before we dive in to all of this draft coverage, which don't worry, we're going to get into all the draft coverage. For now, if we're going to look back at 2020, of course, we got to start with the signing of Tom Brady.
Yeah, if we're going to look back at the 2020 season, we're actually going to rewind all the way to February of that year. And Jason Licht and Bruce Arians are at the NFL Scouting Combine. And it becomes clear that they have plans 1A and 1B. And one of those, whatever order you want them in, is as it became increasingly possible that Tom Brady was available, which seemed impossible, they were going to go all in for that. But they also felt that there was no need to do that if you didn't also do plan B, which was keep the defensive front intact. And that meant somehow re-signing Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul. As we know now, both of those plans were successful, and that laid the groundwork for everything that happened afterwards.
And then, of course, he's not the only player that they added, although he may have gotten the most attention. Then you had an incredible draft, which is great to look back on. Like tonight, you added guys like Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. You added so many other guys like Gronk and Fournette and AB, and I mean, so many additions. Looking back at all of those additions from the draft and free agency, what sticks out to you about that?
Well, the draft started out with 2 picks that ended up being Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr., and both of them were, by the end of the season, legitimate Rookie of the Year candidates on their side of the ball. And I honestly wonder if the Buccaneers would have won the Super Bowl without those 2 picks. It's legitimate to wonder that. But beyond that, Jason Licht and the Buccaneers kept working on the roster the whole time. Rob Gronkowski was right before the draft. There was Leonard Fournette right before the season. There was Antonio Brown in midseason. There was Steve McClendon trade. Kept making the roster better, and all of them mattered by the end of the year.
And then we have all those new players on a year that there's no offseason and there's no preseason. We knew that no matter how good Tom Brady is, no matter how good all the guys you add are, that was going to be interesting. But what was that like watching all of these new guys and the effect that was in terms of not having the offseason or preseason?
Yeah, a lot of pundits believe the Buccaneers were not in a great position because in this type of season with no offseason and no preseason, you didn't want to be integrating a new quarterback, even if it was Tom Brady, into your offense. And you saw a little bit of that. There were some chemistry issues early on, even though the Buccaneers started out 3-1 and then 6-2. Throughout the season, from weeks 1 even to the very end, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians were both saying this offense is a work in progress. We're going to get there. And then, as we'll see later, they did.
Yeah, and a couple of those turning points, I think the halfway point, 6-2, you got the big win over Green Bay. And then, of course, you have that bye week and coming out of that. So it seemed like those were 2 really big sort of turning points of the season after those early offensive struggles.
The Green Bay game was important because it showed what this defense was capable of doing. You know, all these spotlight is on Tom Brady, but we see Jamel Dean with the pick 6. And Ndamukong Suh had a really good sack later in that game. And the Buccaneers took a team that was undefeated and dominated them, and it was the same team that would face in the NFC Championship game. So it pretty much showed what level the Bucs could play on defense. And then, yes, I think going into the bye, they had lost 3 of 4. Several of those were close. One of them was to Kansas City. but coming out of the bye, everything changed.
And then, of course, that run at the end sets them up for the wild card spot in the playoffs, which was going to be an interesting route to go. And we saw that they just cruised right through, even though there was an absolute gauntlet of quarterbacks that they had to go through with that route through the playoffs.
Yeah, in the final 4 games after the bye, Tom Brady's stats were incredible. He played so good. The Buccaneers won all 4 games. And then you see some of those stats there. He was otherworldly during those final 4. And the Buccaneers hit their stride, hit the momentum going into the playoffs. And even though they had to take the wild card route because they didn't beat New Orleans during the regular season, they won that game in Washington, then faced those 3 incredible quarterbacks and became just the 5th team to win 3 straight road playoff games to get to the Super Bowl.
And then, of course, you have the NFC Championship game and you have the Super Bowl. I mean, tell us about those 2 moments and what that really meant for this team.
Well, the defense really turned it up a notch. They had 8 turnovers or 8 takeaways in those games. That led to an incredible difference between the points scored off a turnover, something like 38-6 for the Buccaneers against their opponents. The defense created so many opportunities. In the NFC Championship game, you had the Sean Murphy-Bunting pick right before halftime that led to Scotty Miller's touchdown, and then right after halftime, Jordan Whitehead's forced fumble led to a Cameron Brate touchdown, and that took a game that it looked like Green Bay was grabbing the momentum in and made it 28-10, and the Buccaneers held on from there.
All right, well, we've done a lot of talking about this season. Let's show you some of those amazing moments. Here's a 2020 season recap.
Tom Brady has an agreement in principle to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their new quarterback.
This was a very smart and, for me, unexpected move from Brady.
Brady and Breeze play twice a year. My gosh.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know.
We try to provide you a distraction from it, but there will be overlap between COVID-19 and the National Football League.
Whoever stays healthiest and safest this year, that is who wins.
Go!
I think that they are a playoff team. I think it's a wild card situation. I don't know if they can go from a wild card spot to the Super Bowl.
The Saints are favored. The Saints have won it 3 years in a row, and the Saints may be the best team in the NFC.
I still believe in Bruce Arians, and I think they have the pieces to be an awfully good football team.
He's got it for the touchdown.
Rojo up the gut, touchdown Tampa Bay.
And down he goes. Aaron Rodgers gets sacked again. Devin White.
You guys got a good team.
Yeah, you too. See, baby.
So Tampa has now lost 2 in a row.
The Buccaneers are the story, Rex, as they continue to struggle.
They're running out of road here. They've got to get it figured out.
Nobody bounces back like Brady. You look at the number, he has a .787 winning percentage immediately following an in-season loss.
And for the first time in 13 years, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are headed to the NFL playoffs.
Intercepted to the 42-yard line.
Look out from behind. He gets brought down.
Caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay.
2nd and 9 now. This one's picked. Intercepted by the Bucs. This one's up for grabs and picked.
Gets a block to the right side. Got another block just flushed out. He's sacked at the 35-yard line. Got Scotty Miller in the open. Makes the catch. Touchdown Tampa Bay.
The first franchise in the history of the NFL who will play in the Super Bowl in its home stadium.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a 2nd Super Bowl title in franchise history.
To hold Breeze, Rodgers, and Mahomes at bay. Has it ever been harder? Ever?
We're going for 2. All right, we're going for 2, and we ain't stopping.
They had systematically found a way to bring back the players that they wanted to bring back.
It is kind of scary when you think about what they could do.
Welcome back into the Draft Kickoff Show presented by Miller Lite. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And as Coach said, we're going for 2. And to know how we're going to have to do that, we got schedule release coming up here May 12th. Wednesday, May 12th, the NFL will be releasing the 2021 schedule, calling it the biggest season ever. Find out who we play and when during this NFL Network special at 8 p.m. Eastern on May 12th. We'll also have our coverage of the schedule release on Buccaneers.com and on the official Bucs app. So as Coach said, we're going for 2. big way it looks like they're trying to do that, let's just bring everybody back. Let's just wrap it up, try it again. Second time, the first couple ones we saw that Chris Godwin was signed to a franchise tag, and Shaq Barrett had that last year, and he also got a long-term deal. So tell us about those franchise tags, the deal for Shaq, and what that meant for this team.
Yeah, Casey, at the boat parade, Bruce Arians was saying, you're coming back, you're not going anywhere. But the Buccaneers had 24 potential unrestricted free agents, so the task was almost impossible, yet somehow it was done. And it started with putting the franchise tag on Chris Godwin, who later signed that tag. And then, as you said, that doesn't mean that there's not a long-term deal in the future. Last year, Shaq Barrett played on a one-year tag, and then they kept him around because great pass rushers are hard to find, and so are great receivers like Chris Godwin.
Another thing that is hard to find is a leader like Levante David, another guy that's coming back.
Of all the players we resigned, that's the one that probably made me smile the most when I heard the news. We were so glad that Levante David got to go to the playoffs, win a Super Bowl, and we're so glad he's back. He's the heart and soul of this team.
And then, of course, Tom Brady with his restructuring and the deal with that. And, of course, this guy it doesn't matter how old he is. He just keeps getting better.
Yeah, we're in uncharted territory here with Tom Brady. He's already done more at the age of 43 than every other quarterback combined at that age in the history of the league, as you see here with this graphic. And he intends to play at least through the year 45 season. But his restructured deal also was very important in bringing all these guys back.
And there were so many other re-signings. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning how many free agents there were, so a ton of other names. Who were some of the ones that stood out to you and the importance of bringing them back for going for two?
Well, it was everybody, as it turned out. Rob Gronkowski returned. Ryan Suckup, don't forget how he stabilized the kicker position for the Buccaneers. Leonard Fournette, he became the playoff hero. He's back for another season. And really, Ndamukong Suh to me was a really big one. And we also have heard reports, which may be finalized soon, that Antonio Brown is coming back as well. So the Buccaneers have managed to bring just about everybody back.
Yeah, and the fact that all 22 starters are coming back. It's not even just that you have re-signed free agents, but the fact that you can say every single starter is coming back. And we talked earlier about the idea of there not being that offseason last year, there not being that preseason last year. And now we went from feeling at a disadvantage because of that to this huge advantage in terms of consistency.
That's true. You have the continuity on your side this time around, and it's something that the NFL has not seen from a Super Bowl champion since 1977 and 1978.
And another new addition, one of the only signings so far that hasn't just been bringing someone back, let's talk about a new guy, Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah, there wasn't much room to sign outside free agents, or much need, to be honest with you. But Giovanni Bernard, added to the backfield, basically takes LaShawn McCoy's place on the depth chart, and he's one of the best pass-catching backs in the NFL over the last 8 years. So I think it's a really nice addition, and it could add another element to the offense.
Yeah, and we saw earlier the predictions people were making of the position the Bucs might draft, and running back was one of the ones on there. Do you think the signing of Giovanni Bernard changes anything about that?
That's a great question, Casey, and no, I do not believe that signing Giovanni Bernard means the Buccaneers would not use their first-round pick on a running back. Remember, Jason Licht said, we're going to take the guy that we think is going to be the best player that we have available 2 years from now. And you don't know what's going to happen with this running back core in 2022 and 2023. But if you can grab a special talent that can help you a little bit now, but also be a key guy down the road, running back is definitely on the board.
Well, we're going to be talking more about what the Bucs might do tonight in the draft in the next segment. For now, earlier I was able to catch up with NFL Network's Judy Battista to hear her thoughts on this last offseason, what the Bucs were able to do, and what they might do tonight. I am now joined by NFL Network reporter Judy Battista. Judy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I know you've been covering this league for a long time, and I feel like you're a perfect person to put into context for people, and specifically Bucs fans, how impressive or unique it is for a team to be able to bring back all of its Super Bowl starters.
Yeah, it's totally sort of unheard of. During the boat parade, when Bruce was saying, like, you're coming back and you're coming back, like, we were all watching it on TV thinking, like, it's like not really how it usually goes, right? Like, usually a team wins a Super Bowl and no surprise, guys want to get paid. Nobody blames them for it. You're usually bumping up against the salary cap if you've had a successful team. And so it just doesn't usually happen. Super Bowl teams start to get dismantled little by little. So credit to the Bucs for figuring out a way to do it. Jason Licht and his band of contract makers did an incredible job keeping everybody in the fold. I mean, to return all 22 starters is really unheard of. And I know some people think like, well, is that really good for a team, or do you need to keep improving? It's like, well, I think this is a unique situation for the Bucs because of how bonkers last year was. I feel like the Bucs were still an ascending team, even as they were winning the Super Bowl, certainly on offense. The defense was solid all year, but the offense was still improving even when they were winning the Super Bowl. And so I think keeping the band together for another year is really smart. You have this window with Tom Brady, and go for it. You know, keep them together and go for it again. And certainly the Bucs right now are my team to beat in the NFC. That's for sure.
I love that. And we're going to assume you're not even just saying that just because you're on a Bucs show.
No, exactly. Not just because I like you, but yes, I mean,
yes, I appreciate
that's my real feeling.
This is the real feeling. I like it. I had to nail that down. And then, so if the Bucs do repeat, what do you think will have been the biggest off-season moves that either you or other people will point to as why?
Well, I think keeping Chris Godwin was big. Franchise tagging him was big. Keeping the guys on defense, keeping Levante David there, Shaq Barrett. I mean, Ndamukong Suh. I mean, I think keeping those pieces intact were really critical. And those were the ones that going into free agency, we thought, how are they going to manage to do all of this? So that was the real heavy lifting. And I think if we had to point to individuals, you'll point to that. But really, I think it's much more about the collective, just keeping the whole thing together. I mean, to win a Super Bowl after the kind of weird, non-existent offseason that they had last year, when the offseason disappeared last year, and then even preseason games disappeared and the training camp was so different, you really thought like, this is going to be an even steeper hill to climb for Brady and the offense, right? I mean, they had almost no time together except what they were doing at the high school. And so to now go in and you've had that whole season, and now you've got an off season, I expect the offense to look even better than it did last year. So I think if they repeat, or if they even get close to repeating, what we'll really point to, I think, is just keeping the whole thing together so that they could keep ascending.
And so now looking at this free agency picture, bringing so many people back, how has that changed your thoughts about what they could do or should do in the draft over these last couple months as you guys have been talking about that?
I think it gives them great flexibility, because if you look at the draft, most teams go into the draft thinking that, at least your first round, maybe your second round pick have to be starters right away. That's just not the case for the Bucs. You brought back 22 starters. So you can reasonably look at this draft and say, like, would any of these guys start this year? I don't know. And you might even look at it and say, are all of these guys going to even make the roster? I mean, that's the situation you're in. So that gives them, I think, the luxury of real flexibility. They can afford to take some chances, to maybe pick some people who might be development kind of players, guys who you might say, let's redshirt this guy for a year, give him a year, and then bring him along. Very few teams have that luxury, especially with your high picks. And I think the Bucs do this year because, again, you just brought all your starters back. You assume that those guys are all going to be your starters going through the season. That's a pretty nice position to be in when you go into a draft.
Well, I know Bucs fans can all follow you on Twitter at Judy Batista, and along with you and everyone else at NFL Network, providing the live coverage now through May 1st of the 2021 NFL Draft from Cleveland. Judy, thank you so much for your time.
Casey, thanks for having me.
Welcome back into our draft kickoff show presented by Miller Lite. Whether you are here in stadium for our draft party or watching at home live, thank you so much for being with us. And it is time for us to dive into tonight's draft, what we think the Bucs might do. And of course, we want to start out by letting you guys know about the Draft-a-thon. The NFL is bringing together communities across the country, including fans, players, clubs, influencers, and partners to drive awareness and action to close critical gaps at the intersection of pandemic, recovery, and our hardest hit communities as part of the 2021 NFL Draft. Fans can tune in and donate to the virtual fundraiser at nfl.com/draftathon, with proceeds going to several charities supporting the digital divide in education, health disparities, food insecurity, and mental health. So as we start talking about this draft, the big storyline, of course, is quarterbacks, like it is with a lot of drafts, and what's going to happen with them, especially at the top of the draft, and therefore the trickle-down effect and how that could affect the Buccaneers. What have you seen and heard from that story in this last week or so?
Yeah, it's funny. Quarterbacks were the story of this draft before even all the Aaron Rodgers news or reports broke this week, but this could be the first time that the draft started with 4 straight quarterbacks. There could be some action at pick number 4, or our division rival, Atlanta, could get a quarterback there. It reminds me a lot of 1999 when 5 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks, and as it ended up, 2 of those guys, McNabb and Culpepper, became stars, and the other 3 were pretty much busts. So it's interesting, both from the fact that it's going to start out with QBs, but also you don't know what's going to happen with those guys.
So with the quarterbacks, plus the fact that it could be a pretty offensive-heavy draft, how do those things maybe affect what the Bucs are going to need, what they're going to want, and how that might fit with them?
I think it's a very good thing for the Buccaneers. This draft could break the record of 19 offensive players taken in the first round, and most mock drafts you see don't even have a defensive player coming off the board till pick 10. So the Buccaneers, as we'll talk about in a bit, might be interested in a defensive lineman or an edge rusher. That's pushing all those guys down, and the run on those players is going to be in the second half of the draft.
Well, we can take a look at who the Bucs have drafted in the last 4 years here, and also let's just talk about some of the recent players that have been taken 32 overall. So as we look at these players that have been drafted by the Buccaneers, do you feel like you can get a guy of this kind of caliber at 32? You know, what have you seen from other players that have been drafted 32nd overall?
Oh, certainly you could get a starting caliber player at 32. The Buccaneers got Antoine Winfield at something like 45 last year. I don't know if there's going to be an opening for a new starter this year, but the Buccaneers definitely, I spoke to Jason Licht not long ago, and he said they can get a very good player at number 32. But part of the reason why that player won't necessarily have to play right away is because they've hit on so many starters in the last 4 drafts.
Well, let's start looking at some of the individual positions in this draft and maybe some of the guys that might work for that for the Buccaneers and which of these positions they might have a closer look at. Let's start with edge rushers. I know this is a position that when we saw the poll earlier, some fans were recognizing that they think the Buccaneers might do that. So edge rushers, how likely is that the Bucs want that, need that, and what are some of the guys that could fit with there?
Well, the good thing about taking an edge rusher with that pick is that even though you don't need another starter, you could put him in the rotation right away as opposed to, say, an off-the-ball linebacker. So you got a lot of guys that you see in mock drafts being right around the end of the round, like Gregory Rousseau from Miami, who didn't have a great pro day and sat out last year but was great before that, or Azeez Ojulari of Georgia, who kind of has it all. Or Jalen Phillips, another Miami guy whose pro day was off the charts and was good last year but has some medical concerns. Or even Jason Oweh of Penn State, who famously didn't have any sacks last year in 7 games, but his pro day was insane. 6'5", 260 pounds, and runs a 4.36.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm sure you and I could do that, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in our sleep. So how about offensive linemen? We saw there was a little bit of success with that last year, picking an offensive lineman for the Buccaneers. Do you feel like that's something they could do again this year?
Yes, and the Buccaneers are returning all 5 of their starting offensive linemen, plus Aaron Stinney, who started in the playoffs. So it doesn't feel like a need, but you got to, again, think 1, 2, 3 years down the road. So look at a couple of Alabama guys that could be there at the end. Alex Leatherwood, he's a tackle that you see around the end of the first round, really had a great career at Alabama. And then Landon Dickerson, maybe you work on the interior. He could be your center of the future. He had a great career at Alabama too, but really had a lot of injury issues, which is how you might be able to get the best interior lineman at the end of the first round.
How about interior defensive line? We know obviously Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh, pretty dang good. They're handling that pretty well. How about some depth there? Is that a position you see of a need?
Yeah, that's another position where you could take a guy that could work into the rotation, but probably is more important a few years down the road. Ndamukong Suh, Will Golston, great players, but they're getting up there a little bit. You look at Christian Barmore of Alabama, Levi Onwuzurike of Washington. It's a very shallow position this year, and it's a position where the first guy off the board could be very late in the first round, and that could help the Buccaneers.
We touched earlier a little bit on the running because of Giovanni Bernard and if that changed things. But how about we just talk about wide receiver and running back together? These, what they always call the skill positions in the draft. I'm sure guys like offensive linemen love that they call them that. But let's talk about those 2 positions.
Well, this is what I would call the definition of Jason Licht talking about the Buccaneers maybe being able to do a luxury pick. I mean, our offense is loaded. That's obvious. But since you don't really need anything, you could take a luxury pick here. What about Kadarius Toney, the dynamic wide receiver from Florida, who could help you right away as a return man? Or Rashad Bateman. We've had some pretty good luck with University of Minnesota guys recently. Or even, as we talked about, you could add like a Travis Etienne from Clemson, a really dynamic, big play back who catches passes well. Could help you now, but could be a big part of your future.
All right, well, awesome stuff as always, Scott. Thanks for being with us on the show. Now, I know you got to run back to the Advent Health Training Center to get a chance to talk to Jason Licht before he goes to make the pick, so we'll let you go on that. And as now, we're going to toss to the interview I did with Tristan Wirfs earlier, because you got to talk to the guy we drafted last year. So, Tristan, of course, now that it's draft time again, we had to check back in with you, see what it has been like for the last year for you. It seems like may have gone pretty well your first year in the league. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you do seem like the ideal rookie to talk to about what it is like to get drafted and to come in here. So I wanted to hear what you think is going through these guys' minds, and maybe even the advice that you would have for them, since you figured it out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good year, I'd say. It turned out all right. But I remember kind of just like looking back, what I was feeling at this time. I was kind of nervous because you don't know, you really don't know where you're going to go or where you're going to end up. And for us last year, it being the, the virtual draft and everything, like nobody really knew how anything was going to happen. But I remember it was just kind of like nerves and excitement, just wanting to kind of, get to where we were going to be and just get to work almost. But it was definitely exciting time, just kind of a lot of anticipation.
And how different do you feel now compared to last year? I mean, is it crazy to realize that it's been a year since you got drafted?
Oh, absolutely. That's a good one. I don't know. Now it's just like you're ready to get, you're still ready to get to work, because I mean we're in the off season right now, but it was nice to have some downtime, but I think, you always have that kind of itch to get back to it. But right now, I'm just enjoying training and everything. And, I'm back up in Iowa training in Iowa City. I love it. But it's just, it's fun, you love it.
And what do you think are the biggest areas of growth you've experienced as a player or person in the last year?
Oh, geez. Well, I think, okay, so personally, I think, being out, like, that was like my first time going out of like the bubble of like the 319 area, Lynn County, Mount Vernon, Iowa City. So that was my first time, moving down to Florida. That was my first time being out on my own. So I think that, was definitely a huge step and a lot of growth, being by myself. I think on the field, I think I grew in a lot of ways. I think, coming from Iowa, I was, we ran the ball so much, and then, coming to the NFL, you pass quite a bit. So I think, my pass blocking, I don't know if it changed a little bit, but, me and Coach Gilbert, we worked on a lot of things, kind of tweaked some stuff. So I think I've changed in a lot of ways, but I think my pass pro, is the one I can like see the most.
And I know you got drafted to a Super Bowl winning team, but of course you didn't know that at the time. So how different do you think it would have been if it were this time this year now, if you were getting drafted right now and knowing you're joining a defending Super Bowl champion team? So what do you think that's going to be like for these rookies?
Well, I think somebody's going to come in with a lot of expectations, but so for me, like I have high expectations for myself. So you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. When it comes down to it, it's just football. It's a game we played, since we were little kids. But I think, it'll be a little nerve wracking. It was for me, joining a team with Tom Brady. So, but it was still, exciting. It's getting drafted is what, we dreamed of since we were kids. So, you still got to enjoy it and have fun with it.
You mentioned those high expectations you had for yourself. What were some of those expectations you set last year? And then maybe what are some of the ones that you have for this year?
So last year, I'm normally like a big goal setter. I'll write them on sticky notes and put them on my bathroom mirror just so I see them every day. But last year was a little bit different. I didn't know really what to expect. So my main two goals were just keep Tom as safe as possible, and then I didn't want him to like get mad at me in any way. I didn't want to like have him yell at me or something, so I just tried to stand on his good side.
That seems like good goals. I like that. Don't let Tom get killed. Don't get yelled at by Tom. I think that sounds like good goals to continue moving forward. What was your reaction as you started finding out that all 22 starters were going to be coming back, as each guy started re-signing and coming back? And what are some of those conversations with teammates been like?
It was so crazy because like every day you'd see somebody, like, oh, Shaq's coming back, Sue's coming back. It was just so cool because I get like notifications like on ESPN on my phone or something, and just saying who's coming back. So just to be able to get all 22 guys back, I think that says something about the type of culture we have, with the Bucs. Like guys want to win. It's kind of they could have gone off and got a big contract, but like they wanted to stay and hopefully have the chance to go get another ring. And I think that's really cool.
That's magical. Well, thanks so much and enjoy the rest of the offseason.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right, we want to hear what you think the Buccaneers are going to do tonight. So scan the QR code now to predict what position you think the Bucs will select first. We've got our results there. I don't know if this is because of what Scott Smith and I were just talking about, but it looks like all of a sudden defensive line has gotten ahead of running back. There's a few people predicting edge rusher or linebacker and then some others. This is going to be interesting to see. All right, well, we just talked to Tristan Wirfs. Let's continue our trend of talking to guys who the Bucs have picked in the first round and who have done pretty dang well after that. Here's my interview with Devin White. So Devin, obviously you are a perfect person to talk to the night of the draft, and I want to get your insight on what is going through the minds of guys that are waiting to get drafted tonight.
I know everybody always excited and thankful, just to have the opportunity, but it's kind of nerve-wracking because, you're going to go spend the next 4 or 5 years at an uncommon place, a place that you probably never been, a place that you just don't know nothing about. So I say the number one thing is nerve-wracking, but if you put yourself in a position to know that you're going to be taken with a certain number of picks, like such as myself, I knew I would have been in the top 5 range. So I kind of had the team, I kind of knew the team unless something crazy happened on draft night.
And I was thinking about what it would be like to get drafted to a Super Bowl winning team, to a team coming off of a Super Bowl, and how that might change how they feel, how that might change what you guys expect of these rookies coming in, and how that's unique for this particular guy getting drafted.
Yeah, I think that'd be crazy, especially with going to a great team. You always got a chance of, doing it again, especially if they coming off a Super Bowl win. So, like my buddy Clyde, I know he was very stoked about going to the Kansas City Chiefs last year. But, the number one thing that can kind of hurt with just going in and it's knowing there's going to be a higher expectation, like an even greater expectation, because you're going to get held accountable every day because obviously the team that last won the Super Bowl definitely want to get back there, especially like ourselves. We got our whole team back. So it's nothing less but another Super Bowl for us. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on all the rookies that we get because, BA always preaches that he bring guys in to play. He don't bring them in to sit and wait. He's trying to get them on the field so they can help the team.
Yeah, that's so true. And so you as a captain, as a leader, do you feel a certain responsibility to helping these new rookies come in? And maybe what did you learn last year about trying to help last year's rookies, especially who came in dealing with COVID times?
Most definitely. I know the number one goal is always each one teach one. And that's what I did last year, man. As Winfield and them came in, I grabbed them under the wing and I told them, like, this how it's going to be. This is what's going to be expected. And, you kind of give them that extra motivation, that sense of hope. They got somebody that believe in them that's also playing at a high level. It'll make them more comfortable. And, that's the thing in the NFL. Confidence is key. So I just feel like, taking them under your wing, man, help you win. Because at the end of the day, you need those guys. That's why they come into the NFL, because they're great caliber players.
You mentioned everyone coming back, all those starters from the Super Bowl roster. What has it been like to watch as each guy it would get announced was coming back? And what have the conversations been like between you and some of the other guys on the team?
It's been good, but it's also been crazy because, that don't really happen all the time. So it's just been a blessing in disguise, man, just to know where our franchise has been over the last, decade or so, and just know how fast it turned around and, having everybody that want to stay with us, everybody, taking less money to play with the brothers, just let you know we got a great brotherhood and we believe in one another, man. We kind of didn't want to break up the chemistry. And, I mean, I salute all those guys. You know, me and Sean, we always talking all the time, like, bro, I think we're going to get this person back. And the next thing you know, we get that person back. You know, Vita was like, man, Sue coming back, you know, because I was kind of unsure on what he was going to do. But at the end of the day, Jason Licht and Bruce Aaron and the whole Glazer family, they all did a great job.
So now I want to hear philosophical Devin. We're gonna get the deep side of Devin here. What are the biggest ways that you have grown or changed since getting drafted? On the field, off the field. Let's look back now at the draft at baby Devin coming in the league.
Yeah, I'll say the number one thing is, especially like just being a student, even better student of the game, you know, reaching out to different players, something that I didn't do at the younger age. You know, I was just listening to my coaches and stuff. But as the older I got, you know, I got accustomed to different players. Like I was able to reach out to Patrick Willis and he respond, you know, just different players like that. And then also being a great NFL linebacker, like the Bobby Wagners of the league, they responded back to me, giving me tips on how they do things. And I say another great key component is taking care of my body. The same way I take care of my body during the season, I'm doing the same thing in the offseason. I think that's helping me tremendously.
And then finally, we are doing this interview with you in the barn, which I'm sure shocks nobody. So it seems like you've been spending your offseason the same way you always have, regardless of whether you're a Super Bowl champion or not. It's you and your horses.
Yeah, I just stay true to my roots, man. This is what keep me happy, keep me going. It's an extra workout within itself, and it's a love that I have. So I'm just trying to stay true to myself and don't let the Super Bowl change.
Well, man, talking to Tristan and Devin has me even more excited to see what Jason Licht and his crew are going to do tonight, because those guys have been absolutely killing it. Well, you know, whether you're watching online, whether you're here at Raymond James Stadium, we want to bring a little of that game day atmosphere here. What better way to do that than your Buck Beat drumline? Well, man, we want to keep those game day vibes going on, and we want to make sure you are all hyped and ready for tonight's draft. So please help me welcome your Tampa Bay Buccaneers cheerleaders.
Let me know when you get back. Let me know when you get back. Let me get back. Let me know when you get back. Let me know when you get back. Let me get back. You gotta put it in forward. Don't act like you never been chauffeured. Hey, you gotta put it in forward. Oh, I got something for ya, and it's Pro Magnolia.
Thank you so much to our Tampa Bay Buccaneers cheerleaders. And now, as you see, this is our Geico social wall. If you want to see yourself up on those big video boards in Raymond James Stadium, all you got to do is use hashtag GoBucks whenever you put a photo or video up on Instagram or Twitter. Again, that is hashtag GoBucks for a chance to see yourself featured on the Geico social wall.
You could never ever hold us back. You could never ever hold us back.
Well, a few minutes ago, Scott Smith ducked out of our show here to head over to the Advent Health Training Center to get a chance to talk to the man of the hour, General Manager Jason Licht, right before he is ready to start round one and make those picks. So let's head on over to Scott and Jason now.
Hello, Buccaneer fans. Welcome to the Advent Health Training Center. We are right outside the draft room, and I'm joined by General Manager Jason Licht, who after a one-year hiatus from this room is about to go back in there and begin work on the most important weekend of the offseason. Jason, thank you for your time right before the draft, and good luck this weekend.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
As I alluded to, last year it was a virtual draft. You worked out of a specially appointed room in your own home. If I remember correctly, you even found a few things you enjoyed about that, but are you happy this year to be back in person with your staff, and are there any new challenges to this setup?
I am happy to be back. I'm happy to have all the scouts will all be somewhere in the facility here, so I'll be able to talk with them, and they can be part of the experience because they put in all of the work for this draft. So it's good to be back with everybody. It's going to be a little bit less people in the draft room than normal, but they're all here and they're all accessible.
Well, you said recently that this draft for the Buccaneers could be a draft of wants rather than a draft of needs. Can you explain to Buccaneer fans how that affects your approach and strategy this weekend?
Yeah, it truly is going to be the best available, which is exciting. And it's one thing that we all as a staff are looking forward to. So we can watch it kind of fall to us, see where it ends up, there in the late end of the back end of the draft. We've gone through a lot of scenarios. There's more scenarios this year than we've ever been a part of. But it truly is a situation where we can just get the best player available, and we're not necessarily looking for that player to have to step into a huge role his rookie year, which is also a great thing.
You mentioned scenarios. That's what I was going to ask you about next. When you're picking 5th or 7th or probably even 14th in a round, you can probably game out a lot of the scenarios of what picks would go before you're on the clock. I imagine that's probably not possible to pick 32, but do you think you and your staff can predict with at least some accuracy a handful of guys you'll be interested in that could be available at the end of the round?
Definitely, for sure. And there's going to be a good player there. I promise you that. So we've got it narrowed down. We know that there's a possibility, let's call it 5 players that we have a pretty good feel, one of which will be there.
And everything's still on the board? Everything's still on the table? Trade up, trade down?
Everything's always on the table. We're not going to turn down any phone calls. So we never do, and that's always been part of our philosophy here.
Finally, Jason, I know the focus today and this weekend is on the draft, but the reason that you're in this position to be best player available after winning the Super Bowl, and that's why you're picking 32nd, is you were able to return almost the entire roster virtually intact for next year. I know that was the plan all along. Bruce Arians made that pretty clear at the boat parade, but it was never going to be easy, and it's very uncommon. So now that you've gotten to this point, are you surprised at all that you and your staff and the players and the agents were able to get that accomplished?
That's a tricky question to answer. I didn't know at the time when I doubled down on Bruce's comment at the boat parade as well.
Yes.
So we're going to bring them all back. I didn't realize that it hadn't been done since 1977, 78. If I would have known then, I may not have said those words. But no, in a roundabout way of answering this, I am not surprised because we had such a strong, cohesive locker room. We have a great leader in Bruce. We have a great leader in Tom at quarterback, and everybody wanted to be a part of it.
Well, excellent. Again, Jason, thank you for your time right before you start the draft, and best of luck the whole weekend.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, man, hearing that Jason Licht is completely confident there will be a player they want at 32 and that trading up and trading back is all on the table makes me so excited. The draft is literally seconds away. So thanks to all of you guys for watching, whether you were at home, whether you were here with us at Raymond James Stadium. Thanks for watching our show and enjoy the draft.
There are a lot of really elite prospects at the top of this draft.
What I'm evaluating here is what I see on the field. Yeah, I hear rumors and all that kind of stuff.
You take the lineman every time.
There's no glaring need because he's got the same team that won a Super Bowl.
What should they do?
Winfield's just like Wirfs. I mean, bam, he's contributing every week.
You can't even dream of stuff like this as a kid. You can't.
Rich, giddy up.
Giddy up. Look at Devin White run. My goodness.
O.J. Howard.
O.J. Howard. Chris Godwin. What a catch. This is unbelievable.
Vita Vea.
Vita Vea. How about that for big number 50? Mike Evans becomes the first NFL player to record 1,000 yards or more in his first 7 seasons.